cash donations, and condolence letters to the family of law enforcement officers who perished in the line of duty. USDSA also offers college scholarships for the dependent children of law enforcement, along with a citizen awareness program and thank you cards to law enforcement. These are just some of the ways United States Deputy Sheriff's Association assists America's law enforcement and the citizens they serve. For more information about United States Deputy Sheriff's Association or to see how you can help, visit www.usdeputy.org. United States Deputy Sheriff's Association, taking training to the next level because lives are on the line.
Tune in to Live Mike with Mike Romigh, presented by Heritage Valley Health System, weekdays from 6:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. It's an all-new show on Beaver County Radio, where Mike discusses the issues important to Beaver County.
Urinated at a car wash in front of children. Oh, yeah, and police officers.
I think it's the end of society as we know. I think it's one of the signs of the apocalypse.
There's also special guests, weather, sports with Matt Durzik, and news every half hour with Curtis Walsh. So tune in to Live Mike with Mike Romigh, weekdays, right here on Beaver County Radio.
You are invited to a fun-filled afternoon as St. Barnabas Charities hosts an exclusive Ladies' Day Out, Saturday, October 7th at Trees Manor in Gibsonia. Win prizes drawn every half hour, including a Fendi handbag, jewelry, cash, and more valued at $5,000. Plus, enjoy food stations, wine, signature drinks, shopping with specialty vendors, basket raffles, and music. Proceeds benefit the St. Barnabas Free Care Fund. Register today at stbarnabascharities.com or call 724-625-3770.
You're listening to 99.3 FM, presented by St. Barnabas, in addition to 1230 WBVP Beaver Falls. Welcome to the Best of Beaver County, presented by St. Barnabas, a weekly segment dedicated to putting the focus on the amazing things and the amazing people behind them in Beaver County. The Best of Beaver County is sponsored by and content is provided by St. Barnabas. The show airs every Thursday from 11 to 11:30 on WBVP, WMBA, 99.3 FM, and Facebook Live. Now, with no further ado, let's welcome host Mike Romigh to introduce today's program.
It's the Best of Beaver County on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. I'm Mike Romigh, and we present to you interesting and successful people in Beaver County each and every week. And we hear stories that perhaps we've never heard before, but it just gives us a better perspective of Beaver County and the people that we have come to know. Our guest this morning was a 1960 graduate from Freedom High School. He grew up in Conway, attended the University of Miami. You may know the name Jimmy Maggs from the Baden Bowl, from Center Lanes, from the Shadow Lakes golf course and restaurant. But there's so much more to Jimmy Maggs than all that. Welcome, Jimmy, and thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
I have known you and of you for many years now, from my many visits to Shadow Lakes for banquets or golf outings or things like that, but we never really had a conversation. And talking with you before the program, when I invited you to come on the program, I probably have just skimmed the surface in knowing who Jimmy Maggs really is.
Well, I think so. I've been kind of a personal friend. I kept everything to myself. A lot of people didn't know that I played for the University of Miami. I was a quarterback. I played with basketball with Rick Barry and a guy by the name of Marchino, but they changed their real name to Marciano. So I was friends of Rocky Marciano and Pete, and we were all Kappa Sigma brothers at the fraternity house. So we all ran around together, you know.
Yeah, you weren't a sparring partner with Rocky Marciano, though, were you?
No, sir. Only at the dinner table.
We University of Miami, Conway. Let's go through this a little bit because you have a fascinating story to tell from growing up in Conway. Tell us a little bit about your family background.
Our family background is with my mother and dad. They came from Sicily, and they came across with my grandfather, who couldn't speak any English, and they ended up in South Fork and Johnstown when they came across, and then that's where we grew up in South Fork for many years when we were young kids, And we lived at the top of the mountain, which we didn't have running water. We had an outhouse, and at them days you didn't have furnaces. You turned your stove on in the bottom floor and heat the building. And then my dad had a job on a railroad as a welder, making $14 a day. And we grew all our food on the hillside with steps like you see, in them days they had, everybody grew food, and they had chicken coops and everything. So it was an experience. And my dad got into Conway. They started the plant down there, and we stayed in Johnstown, South Fork for a couple more years. Then we got situated in Conway. And then that's we spent our life right in Conway. And then we ended up buying a bar, Joe's Inn, and we lived upstairs for years.
Yeah. And you said, tell the story you were telling me about your mother and how the family first got into the bowling alleys.
Yeah, my mother never bowled before, but she got in a league down at Rochester Bowl, and she went bowling one night, and she was terrible, and the lady on her team said, "Stella, you're the worst bowler in Beaver County. Don't come back anymore." And my mother said to her, "I'm going to build a bowling alley, and I'm not going to let you bowl in it." When my mother come home, she had smoke coming out of her ears. And she had a Brunswick guy there the next day, and that's how we got started. And that started the bowling business.
Yeah, and subsequently you became the owner of Baden Bowl.
Yes, Mr. Kuby and my dad were good friends, and I think Brunswick was turning the bowling alley over to him. He gave me a call one day, said, "Are you interested?" And I said, "Sure, I'm interested." So I went down, and I negotiated with him, and we struck a deal out, and what I got I won't repeat. But when I told my dad, he said, "You didn't get it for that." And I said, "Yes, I did, I said, but he really wanted to get rid of the business. And I grew that bowling alley to a real big place.
Yeah, it was, in fact, it was known nationally, the Baden Bowl.
Yeah, they had a lot of senior tournaments there, professional bowlers coming in. That's how I met Don Carter and the older guys, Billy Waylow, and they come in, And we also had them down at Imperial Lanes at one time, too.
Yeah.
So we my mother and dad are the reason where I'm at today, because they work 24/7 every day. They had a life of just work, and that's it.
Yeah. Imperial Lanes, and how did that develop over the years? Just because there was such an attraction, such a fan base for bowling?
Yeah, at that time we started out with 10 alleys, then we went to 12. Then I added 12 more upstairs, because at that time the bowling was peaking really good. We had an Anderson Row, we had the Railroad Bowlers, we had Crucible, and you had all the mills down in Ambridge that had bowling teams. So for many years it was worthwhile. But then towards the end, my mother and dad got into the 80s and 90s, and I had an opportunity to sell it to Rite Aid. My dad says not to sell it, but I did. I built him a house up by me. And then a year later, he said to me, that was a smart move. I had to get him out of there and let them enjoy the rest of their life, And be honest with you, my dad never paid for a car ever since I took over.
Yeah.
I used to give him money to buy groceries every day. Hey, son, I need money for groceries today, and I'd help him take them in every day. So I had a great mother and dad. And we had a bar before Cheers. If anybody's familiar with Cheers, we had the whole group of people, 10, 20, and that was their hangout every day and Sundays. My mother would cook for them at 4 o'clock in case they were a little tipsy and they weren't drunk. And then they'd start watching the second game and they'd go home. They all loved my mother. My mother and dad passed away. They were so tremendous for me. They were just great people.
Now, we know you as Jimmy Maggs, your birth name, your family name, Manganello.
Yes. My grandfather was Angelo Manganello, and his brother was Don. And he, you're not going to believe this, but didn't find out till later, he is the son of the movie star, Joe Manganello.
Okay. When I saw that, I didn't want to presume anything, but I thought, Manganello, is that Joe Manganello?
Well, I say because when they were in South Fork and Johnstown too, then they moved to Uniontown, and then my dad told me one day, we're related to the Manganellos from Uniontown, and then that's when Joe became a big star, and everybody said,
Did you ever meet Sofia Vergara?
No, I haven't. No.
No. That would have been something you would remember.
I would have remembered that one exactly.
Yeah. Now, you also were telling me, and I don't know that anybody knows this story, but you basically integrated bowling in Beaver County. For a long time, blacks weren't allowed to bowl in a lot of the bowling alleys.
Yeah, my dad was like a foreman down the Conrail at that time, Pennsylvania Railroad, And he had a lot of black guys working for him, really nice guys, Coleman, Chuck Dawson, Whitted and all them. And they worked under my dad. And they went down to Baden at one time, which we didn't own. And they wanted to have a bowling league. And they probably had like 70, 80 bowlers. Well, at that time, they wouldn't let them bowl. So they came down one night. I was in bowling alley, which trying to get it started with business-wise. And my dad said, I want you to come outside. And there had to be 100 black people. I hate to say the word black people, but that's what it was at that time. And they said, Joe, can we bowl? My dad says, heck yeah, you can bowl. That's how we got started. It's called a True Shot League back in the 60s. And right now, it carried over to some of their kids. And we still have them down Baden Bowl. Mm-hmm. And then Sharon Patterson was in Swickley, and she found out that they tried to bowl in Swickley. They wouldn't let them. So she called up, and she said, Jimmy, I'm Sharon Patterson. Can we come to Baden Bowl and bowl? And I said, heck yeah, come on down. So they're still bowling with me now. They bowl on Wednesday. We're in a night, but now they're in a daytime, you know.
Yeah. So you basically broke the color barrier. Your family broke the color barrier for bowlers in Beaver County.
Yes, and well, it got worse than that. Then I got a reputation of letting black people start bowling. And, you know, so what I did was on the men, Chuck Dawson, Jimmy Sally, and all these guys were really great 200 bowlers, you know. So they wanted on a Friday night league, which was classic league. And I put them in there, you know. And the guys adapted to them. The guys enjoyed bowling with them, you know. Everybody became good friends, you know. And then, so Elwood Woods, he wanted to bowl in a travel league. That's a Tri-Valley Classic League. And I said to him, I need a bowler. You want a bowl? So I brought him in. Boy, did I hear the heat from the other proprietors, too, you know.
Yeah.
Even when I brought the blacks down, Imperial, the bull. So I brought him in, and then we ended up putting another team in another league, you know, over center, which everybody were worked out. It was fine. Mm-hmm. And then Sharon Patterson one day, she said to me one day, Jimmy, you know, if it wouldn't be for you, black people wouldn't be bowling. Mm-hmm. And, you know, she's a great person. Yeah. She's still bowling down Baden Bowl every Wednesday now.
But they tried to blackball you, too.
Well, they did, yeah. Some of the pariahs got get it. I'm the only guy in Beaver County at that time had a bowling of 1 million pins.
Yeah.
1 million pins knocked down in the let me see, I have the date here. 1989, I knocked down 1 million pins. Yeah. And that's like 30-some years from now. Mm-hmm. You know, so you can figure what my total is.
Yeah.
And so...
So you played all different sports, but what was your favorite? It sounds like bowling was something that you really enjoyed.
Well, what happened was I was going to be drafted by Washington. Mm-hmm. And so we used to play the Yankees. We were playing baseball. We used to play the Yankees on the weekends. They'd come down to Miami or, you know, Coral Gables, and we'd play them. And I became good friends with Whitey Ford and Yogi Bear and Moose Garn and them guys. Because we'd play 3 games here, and we'd go up to Fort Lauderdale. We'd stay there, and they pitted the bill for us, and then we'd play them. So, and I became good friends with Whitey Ford. So we come back to our place to play, and he says, Jimmy, he says, I'm going to throw you a big watermelon. Do whatever you want with it. But I hit it over the right field fence, and he got the water tower out there, hit the water tower. Mm-hmm. And all the players on the Yankees were booing him, you know, and cheering me. I struck out the next 3 times. I saw pitches I never seen in my life. So that was the end of my big head. I tell that story to everybody, but, you know, it was a great time. Then we went up to Fort Lauderdale, and we all just had a good time. You know, they were great guys, Yogi Bear and the whole group. So I really wanted to play for the Yankees, but I think I was Washington at that time. But then when I was playing shortstop, and then the ball went down the third base line, the third baseman wanted to get it. I went from short to third, if anybody knows. Had my back to the runner coming in, second base. Slid into me. I had a broken ankle, bone sticking out of my leg, and a dislocated knee. Yeah. And I was tied up. I had them cast on for 3 months back them days. Yeah. And they forgot all about me after that. So I was done.
Put an end to your career.
Yeah. But then when Rick played for San Francisco, I'd bring him into town. You know, he played in Pittsburgh, the ABA. Yeah. I introduced him to my dad, mother, and my dad would cook for him. So we still became friends. And then I went up to meet Rocky Marciano. Well, I met him down at the school, but his mother invited me up at Brockton. And she was cooking one day, and she's making cookies, and she told me, I got this big tray of cookies, Jimmy, but I got to hide it from Rocky because he'll eat the whole thing, you know. So, you know, it was a great time.
I say there's a book here. Should be a book, Jimmy, before it's all over with.
Oh, I've heard people say that whenever I took over the Penguins. And that's,
We're going to get into that in just a couple of minutes and your experience with the Pittsburgh Penguins and letting Mario Lemieux live at your house. Also, when Franco Harris passed away, they had his funeral service and dinner at Shadow Lakes Golf Course and Country Club. So we'll talk about that as well. Jimmy Maggs is our very special guest here on the Best of Beaver County. Hope you're enjoying it. With just so many stories. And we'll continue on Beaver County Radio.
Oh my goodness, Amy, it's so good to see you.
Jennifer, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you? Is your mom doing any better?
Thank you for asking. I don't know if I can answer without being emotional. I'm sorry. I'm just tired and worried. I can't always be there for her, and it's so stressful.
I really understand. That's how I was with my dad. I'd recommend calling St. Barnabas. We did. We started with just having them come in for home care. He was so excited to see them show up. And when he needed more, we were able to move him in at Beaver Meadows, where he still has his own home-like space and excellent care.
Thanks for telling me that. I don't even know how to start, but I have to do something.
Oh, you can just give St. Barnabas a call. They have directors that can explain how it all works. Trust me, you'll feel so much better, and so will your mom.
I'm so glad I ran into you.
Visit stbarnabashealthsystem.com or call 724-443-0700 for care apart from the ordinary.
This is the Best of Beaver County radio show on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. Our special guest on the Best of Beaver County is Jimmy Maggs, Baden Bowl, Imperial Lane, Shadow Lakes Country Club, and there are so many other things with that. When I think of Jimmy, we think of the bowling, and we think of Shadow Lakes, a world-class country club, golf course that you purchased a number of years ago and have developed it into a place where people, not only people from Beaver County, but all over the country want to go to and golf. And you said just recently you had a tournament over there that most of us didn't even know about.
Yes, we were fortunate to have the Senior PGA Senior Tournament there about a month ago. They were there Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And it was quite a great experience. We had golfers from all over Alabama, Texas, Maine. They come in to golf, you know. And they really enjoyed it. But the first time some of them come in from down south, they saw the hill over there by number 5. And he said, look at the hills. I said, you haven't seen anything yet, you know. But they ended up turning liking the course. We got a real nice letter back from them that a lot of them came up from Florida. They played a couple weeks before that in Florida, and they said they really enjoyed the service that we gave them, you know. Yeah.
So they just don't only come to golf. You bring a lot of business into Beaver County. Yeah,
we do. We have. I'm fortunate to have a lot of the golf outings, you know, and we do a lot of the police outings out of Pittsburgh. The detectives of city cops. We have. We try to work with the Beaver County cops. They just had a golf outing there, you know, and then the schools. I'll tell you what, the schools, we have a lot of golf outings. We kind of give them a break. I know that Amherst used to have a golf outing when Morocco and them were there, and Donya Nessie. And they would make enough money to buy maybe helmets one year, shirts next year, pants. You know, the budget wasn't in for schools. Right. And now we have just about every school in Beaver County having a golf on. And some in Allegheny County, too, you know. Sure. So, but they're fundraisers for the organizations, you know. And you tell the story about Franco Harris and the connection and that you had the funeral there. Yeah, Jimmy Sacco and I became good friends with Roonies, and I knew the Roonies when I went to the Super Bowl with them out in Arizona one time, and I'll tell you a real quick story about that. So we all go to this restaurant, Mr. Rooney and everything, and one of your old announcers from no, he was on WTAE, and he was smoked. Oh, okay. And we went in a restaurant. He lit up a cigarette, and they told him you can't have a cigarette. And so he was so mad he went out and sat on a porch. He didn't want to eat with us. Myron Cope, I think it was. Okay, yeah. Myron Cope. You know exactly who I meant, didn't you? So he got so mad. And Mr. Rooney says, Well, that's what it is, but, we had a great time.
Yeah, just sit outside, do that. And so through those connections, you got to know Franco Harris, and through the Steeler organization, you
Yes,
had all the former players come in.
Yeah, a lot of times Franco would come down, and there's something a lot of people didn't know about Franco, and it's kept secret forever. On Saturdays, we have special ed. At that time, it was called the ARC. We've had that since 1970, and we still have maintained it now. And we usually average like about 80, 90 kids. Back then, we probably had 110 kids, bowling. And he would stop in sometimes, unexpected on his way, because he dated a girl in Aliquippa. And I knew him from Steelers and that, meeting him. And he would sign autographs for them. And then one year I had a Santa Claus, which I had Santa Claus every year for them. And one of the boys would watch outside, say, Santa Claus is coming, to get on a microphone. Everybody attention, Alwyn. Yeah. Everybody be quiet. Here comes Santa Claus. Well, Franco Harris showed up one day. And then he became a regular maybe once a month. He'd come down. He'd throw a couple balls with the kids. They'd hang on him. And he'd sign some autographs, So it's a great – you have to be around these kids to love them. There's, they're so lovable,
Yeah.
So my family, we still do it. My wife and him do it. Yeah. Well, that's the way we grew up.
And you mentioned that in the different articles, that is an organization that is very near and dear to you.
Yeah, that was, my dad's sisters, they worked at Polk up in Johnstown. And that's like for mental deranged people. And I think that's where we got our, our love of affection for handicapped people and sick people like that, In fact, last week we just had 200 people over there. And these were people who tried to commit suicide. And the doctors really, first time they ever had this, really was a great success for what they did for the kids, adults they brought in. They had them in tables of 10s. And they told them, listen, whoever you're sitting with, talk up a conversation, because they're here the same reason you're here. And it was wonderful. And they had great success. And they had gifts for the kids, not kids, but adults and everything. These were adults who wanted to commit suicide, take their lives, and different things. Like, it was a great success, and it brought me back to the days when we did that. Then we used to have dances for the ARC and over at the club, and I'll tell you what, you ought to see them. They're just chugging around, dancing up and down, and look, Jimmy, I'm dancing. It's a great time, and it brings tears to your eyes every time I talk about it. I get a little weak in the knees and the eyes, because
that's very special.
It's a very special thing, and I got that from my dad's sisters. And my daughter's like that too. She teaches first grade. She did special ed for like 15 years too.
Yeah,
so it runs in our family.
So you give back to the community. You rub elbows with a lot of big names, movers and shakers all over the country. But yet you're still down to earth. You're still here in Beaver County. Call Beaver County your home. And one thing that I wasn't aware of until you were telling me about it is your connection to Edward DeBartolo Sr. and the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah, how all that started was my dad and them, they came over from Italy together, and my dad's dad, and on the other side of the South Fork at Johnstown, he married one of the girls of in our cousin family. So my dad and them knew. My dad and him used to go gambling a lot back. It was a big thing back in the 50s and 60s and 40s. And I and my dad were great friends because they were a little bit of blood relationship there. And so you have a guy, and he had a restaurant in Youngstown. And one of the guys that worked for Mr. DeBartolo would come in on his way back from shopping down the Strip District, and he'd have something to eat. My dad would cook for him, and he said, "Tell Senior we have to go gambling once in a while. Go to Vegas. They used to go to Cuba and all that." So anyway, he said to my dad, he's going to sell a team. He don't want nothing to do with the hockey team. They're just taking advantage of him or something. My dad pointed to me, and he said, "There's a guy who knows hockey." So Petey says, didn't tell me what he was going to do. Tell Senior. He said, Jimmy, I talked to Joe last night, and Jimmy was there, and he said, Jimmy knows a little bit about hockey. So I get a call from him the next day. He says, "What are you doing?" I said, "When he calls you, you say nothing." He says, "Can you come over?" And I went over there, and we sat and talked for like 3 hours upstairs in his office, and we started talking about the hockey team. He said, "I know a little bit about a hockey team." He said, "Well, I think I have the team sold." I says, "I'll make you a winner. I'll win you 2 Stanley Cups." And so we're sitting there talking. He said, "What do you think's wrong with the team?" "Well, we got 30 points in here, and the problem with the team is the coach." So he says, okay. He says, okay, well, I'll get back to you, and tomorrow I'll call you. So in the meantime, he calls the coach up.
Mm-hmm.
He calls the coach up. He calls him over. He comes over that night. It was on a Monday. He says, you know a guy by the name of Jimmy Maggs? Yeah, he says he comes in, he knows a lot of the players. He sits up there, and he's always jotting things down. And he had a little clipboard or something. And he's good friends with Carlisle and Boutet and Malone and all these guys. And he said, well, he says, the trouble with the team is the coach. He says, you're fired. So I go to practice the next day.
Yeah.
The players all knew that I got him fired that night. Nobody tips me off. So I'm walking in, my head this big, I didn't know anything. There's 4 Mont Lebanon cops there. He wanted to fight me. So that's how it started. So then, so he calls me up that day, and he said, I want you to call Paul Marth up. I said, okay. Now, Paul Marth at that time, he was a big star quarterback. He was a safety, played for the Steelers, played for Denver, and he ran the 49ers. So, and he was up in the first Fox Chapel, and I'm in here's Port Conway district, you know. And so he tells me, I'll have Paul Martha call you tomorrow. No, he told me, Paul Martha will call you tomorrow, So I walked up the stairs, and he's going up to get into the stadium. And he's in front of me, and I said, Mr. Martha. He turned around, I said, what do you want? I said, my name's Jimmy Maggs. Oh, you're the guy I got to call tomorrow. I says, okay. So I called him, we went in, and we went to Tambellini's on the south side where it's at now, and we talked for a couple of hours. And Paul says, the big lawyer was there. He knows more about the team than we do. So then I got involved, and then I started running the team. And then at that time, he was working on a trade for Paul Coffey, and I said to him, Paul, a couple of guys told me Andy Moog is sitting out. He's just in not signing, and he's working out. I said, we can get him for nothing. We'll get him for 3rd round pick or whatever we can get him for. He said, no, if I get Coffee, I'll be happy. I said, Paul, we can get the other guy. I said, okay, Paul, this is my first venture. I said, we'll go along with you this time. So we ended up getting Coffee. And then in the meantime, Boston gets Moog for a 3rd round pick and a couple broken sticks. So we went to Boston about 2 weeks later, and Snyden walks in the box and says, Paul, great deal getting Coffee. Well, why didn't you get Moog? He said, I got him for nothing. I said, Paul, that's the last trade you're making. So that's when I got Coffee. Then I made the deal for Rick McPlish, and I brought Flockhart here, Andy Brinkley, and Eisenhower. I think that was his last name. Excuse me if I don't have it. And that was the start of it. Then I told Paul, you got guys 5'9", 5'10", we're getting killed. And so then I started drafting some big guys, and we come a long way,
Yeah.
So after we won the first cup, we were in Minnesota, and Senior came to the game, and they kept showing the owner of the Minnesota hockey team, and never showed Mr. DeBarlo. So we beat him handily. So we're on our way downstairs to celebrate, and a guy from ESPN was walking down in front of us and said, hey, Mr. DeBarlo was here for the whole game. He said, somebody told him he wasn't here. So that night, the big lead story was Mr. DeBarlo was at the game. So I introduced all the players in the locker room down there celebrating. I took each one separately over and said, he wants to meet you.
Good.
And he sent me a real nice thank you letter the next day. So
we had about 2 minutes left. Mario Lemieux stayed with you for a while.
Yeah, he did. He stayed with us for about 3 years, and I told you about his contract.
Yeah.
Let me repeat it.
$3 million. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so he first 2 years he didn't make the playoffs. I said, great season. No, he said, Jimmy, if you don't make the playoffs, you're nothing. So the next year we make the playoffs. And so he comes to the house and he's sitting there. He says, I want to sign my contract. I said, so, okay, I'll call Paul, Senior will come over there. So he said, yeah, Senior will see us tonight. So we go over to Youngstown, and we're in the meantime, I called Senior. I said, Mario's looking for $3 million. He said, I don't pay nobody $3 million, And I said to him, well, we'll come over, see what you can do. So we get there, and we're talking back and forth, and I'm sitting on one side, Mario's on the other side, Paul's there, and he says, son, I hear you want to know your contract. And he said, yeah, I'd like to get over before the playoffs start so I could concentrate. He said, what are you looking for? He said, I'm looking for $3 million. He says, I never paid anybody $3 million. And then I said, Mr. Barley, you paid your quarterbacks, 49ers, you paid them all big money. I said, this guy's a quarterback for me. He'll win me games. So he says, okay, son, Jimmy says you're worth $3 million. I'll give you $3 million. Now go earn your money. He didn't talk to him for 6 months.
Oh, great stories, and so many police people and places and things that you've done, Jimmy. We're honored to have you here on the program, and you are a really an institution here in Beaver County, and we appreciate everything that you've done and wish you continued success.
Well, thank you very much. I don't think I'm really that great institution. I'm still my old Jimmy Maggs, you know.
Yeah, you keep a low profile,
I do,
but you've
do.
done a lot of good. So congratulations and thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Jimmy Maggs. Jimmy Maggs, Shadow Lakes Country Club, so many things going on and so much you don't know about. We'd like to tell the whole story again at some point. Jimmy Maggs has been our guest on the Best of Beaver County radio show. I'm Mike Romigh. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for listening to the Best of Beaver County. St. Barnabas is pleased to have provided content and sponsorship for the program. Tune in this Sunday at 11:30 for an encore presentation of today's program on Beaver County Radio. And next Thursday at 11 for another edition of the Best of Beaver County on WBVP, WMBA, and 99.3 FM. Beaver County Radio is your source for local news in Beaver County and surrounding areas. Tune in weekdays starting at 6:30 a.m. for news reports at the top and bottom of each hour with Curtis Walsh. Eddie Crow has afternoon news at the bottom of each hour, and news correspondents Sandy Giordano and Matt Durzik have reports from local school board and municipal meetings. You can also follow Beaver County Radio on our website,